In his tent on the outskirts of the forest in Gainesville, Danny sat listening to the music from his recorder, humming along and trying to put words to the melodies. He wrote song lyrics and recorded his voice while singing. When boredom struck, he took a few sips from a bottle of cheap alcohol before falling asleep on his tattered bed. This had been his routine since his fight with his stubborn father, who had thrown him out of the house after losing an eye and an ear during their brawl 3 months ago. Danny tried to find a job and secured one as a waiter at Bonko Restaurant in Shreveport, Louisiana. However, he couldn't keep the job or socialize with the community, forcing him to live in that tent near the forest surrounding the student housing. He resorted to stealing to get enough money for food and drink. While he was sleeping, he saw his father cursing him with the worst names, so he got up from his bed, sweat dripping from his forehead. So he decided to walk around the place, and there he was attracted by the light emanating from one of the university housing apartments, and he saw through the window the shadows of 2 girls changing their clothes in preparation for bed. This scene stirred sexual desire and unleashed the monster lurking behind the poet and artist's sensitive robe. He returned to his tent and brought his military knife and duct tape. When the lights went out and the place became silent, Danny approached the apartment's sliding glass door and was able to gently remove the screws and remove it without causing a fuss. Danny was very nervous and his heart was beating hard. When he entered the apartment, he found the 17-year-old Christina Powell sleeping on the sofa on the ground floor. He stood and looked at her face, but before he extended his hand to her, he remembered that there was another girl, so he decided to walk around the apartment looking for her. Then he went up the stairs to find Sonia Larson sleeping on her bed, so he pulled out his knife and stabbed her several times in the chest after holding her breath with his hand. Then he went down the stairs and returned to Christina, who decided that it would be his toy that he would entertain himself with that night. The poor girl woke up to find his fist tightly closed her mouth. Then he put the knife on her neck and ordered her to submit to him. He tied her hands behind her, then tore off her clothes with the knife and raped her on the couch. When he finished, he ordered her to put her head down. Then he stabbed her 5 fatally in the back. Then he got up. He dragged her body upstairs, raped the 2 bodies, put them in a sexual position, and left the place after taking a shower. Danny felt a surge of self-confidence after committing his first double murder, and it didn't take long for him to claim another victim. On the night of Saturday, August 25, 1990, Danny broke into a dormitory apartment by prying open the glass door with a knife and screwdriver. After searching the room and finding no one, he decided to wait for the victim to return. At around 11 p.m., the door opened, and Danny hid behind the curtain to see how many people were in the apartment. When he realized it was just a lone girl, he moved behind her. She felt a large hand grasp her neck, and before she could scream, another hand waved a knife in front of her eyes. In a gruff voice, Danny ordered her to obey or he would slit her throat. Terrified, the girl had no choice but to comply as the killer led her to the bedroom with unsteady steps. He tied her hands and tore off her clothes with his knife. After satisfying his sexual urges, he ordered her to bend over and put her face on the bed. He then stabbed her multiple times in the back. This time, Danny decided to mutilate the body. He decapitated her and placed her head on a shelf opposite the bed. He then slit her body from the abdomen downwards, removed her breasts, and placed them beside the body on the bed before fleeing the scene. The next day, the body was discovered, and the crime scene with its dismembered remain shocked the police. After investigating, it was revealed that the body belonged to Krista Hoyt, an 18-year-old university student. The series of murders in the university housing caused a wave of panic among the students. By the arrival of fall, many decided to cancel their enrollment and transfer to other institutions. Many also changed their daily habits and routines, opting to sleep in groups for mutual protection. The police increased patrols around the area and issued a list of suspects, with a prominent suspect being a University of Florida student due to his history of mental illness and a disfigured face from a car accident. Most of the serial killer's victims were dark-haired, brown-eyed girls, leading the police to believe that the killer was monitoring and selecting victims based on these characteristics. Despite the anxiety and fear among the students, 23-year-old Tracy Pauls felt safe. After all, she lived with her boyfriend, 23-year-old Manny Tabawada. a muscular young man who had promised to protect her from any harm and decided to sleep on the ground floor to guard her. On Monday, August 27th, Danny attempted to break into their apartment at night. As he tried to pry open the glass door, Manny woke up and confronted him. A struggle ensued, but Danny managed to fatally stab Manny after grabbing his knife from the floor. Tracy woke up to the sounds of the fight downstairs and cautiously went down the stairs, where she saw the killer finishing off her boyfriend. Terrified, Tracy tried to retreat without being noticed, but Danny saw her, and a chase ensued. Tracy hurried up the stairs in a panic, reaching her room, where she locked the door and tried to barricade it with heavy objects. She hid in a corner, her heart gripped with fear. Within minutes, Danny broke into the room, captured her, tied her up, raped her, and then placed her body in a sexually provocative position after stabbing her multiple times. He left her boyfriend's body as it was. Before I complete, let's talk about Danny. Danny Harold Rolling was born on May 26, 1954, and grew up in a violent and abusive household. His father, James Roussel, was a strict man who worked as a police officer in Shreveport, Louisiana. He was harsh and cruel, constantly belittling and humiliating Danny, telling him multiple times that he didn't love him and wasn't welcome at home. As a result of his father's abuse, Danny was isolated from his peers and witnessed his mother Claudia and brother Kevin being physically beaten by their father. One time, Danny's mother was hospitalized after being severely injured during one of these violent incidents. She filed a complaint, accusing her husband of forcing her to perform oral sex on him with a razor blade. However, she later withdrew her complaint and returned home because she had nowhere else to go with her children. James constantly belittled Danny, and on one occasion, he threw him to the ground, kicked him, and had him arrested by the police without a reason, simply because he felt embarrassed by him due to his being his son. This left a profound impact on Danny's psyche, leading him to commit further atrocities later on. Danny's youth was marked by reckless and disorderly behavior, resulting in multiple arrests for petty theft in Georgia. He was also accused of breaking into a house and committing a sexual assault while the victim was changing her clothes. His father eventually threw him out of the house after a violent argument, and Danny became homeless, unable to hold down a job. The police were stumped in their efforts to identify the serial killer terrorizing the city and causing fear among university students. On September 7, 1990, they managed to thwart an armed robbery at a store in Ocala, Florida. During the investigation, the detective almost closed the case and sent the suspect to court for armed robbery charges. However, upon examining the suspect's vehicle, the detective noticed something unusual: a military knife, adhesive tape, and a gun that caught his attention. He contacted the sheriff's department in Shreveport and shared his suspicions about the suspect, telling them that he believed he might be the serial killer they were searching for. After gathering evidence and comparing it to the wounds on the victims' bodies and scratches on the doors during break-ins, it was established that the knife matched the same one used in the crimes. In search of more evidence, the police searched his campsite and found items belonging to his victims. Additionally, audio recordings surfaced in which he confessed to being the serial killer. After being confronted with the evidence, Danny admitted to his crimes and revealed that his motivation for committing them was his ambition to become a notorious serial killer like Ted Bundy. His trial began in November 1991 in the Alachua County Courthouse in Florida. During the proceedings, the prosecution presented evidence and confessions, while the defense attorney attempted to prove that Danny suffered from severe antisocial personality disorder and violent sexual disorders. Amidst the back and forth, the trial lasted a long time. On April 20th, 1994, the judge struck his gavel after delivering the verdict, which brought joy to the victims' families as they were pleased with the death sentence handed down to Danny Harold Rolling. He was then transferred to the state prison's death row. While awaiting execution, Danny tried to write and record several folk songs. During Danny's imprisonment, controversy arose among Louisiana investigators about the possibility that Danny committed other crimes he had not confessed to. It is believed that Danny was responsible for the murder of the Grissom family while they were having dinner on November 4, 1989, resulting in the deaths of William Grissom, his daughter Julie, and his grandson. The killing method and the mutilation of the girl's body were similar. When confronted with the crime, Danny denied it and attempted a final appeal, which was rejected. As Danny's execution date approached, he requested to meet with a priest. During his meeting with Father Mike Hudspeth, he confessed to his crimes and sought forgiveness, handing over a note in which he admitted to killing the Grissom family. On Wednesday, October 25, 2006, prison guards served Danny his last meal, which included seafood consisting of crawfish and shrimp with sauce, fried potatoes, strawberry-flavored cake, and a cup of tea for dessert. After finishing his meal, the guards escorted Danny to the execution room, where he was strapped to a bed in the center of the room and injected with lethal drugs. The doctor started the machine, and the poison began to flow through Danny's veins, spreading through his body. Danny then screamed, "There is nothing greater than you, Lord," then looked at the glass window of the room where the victims' families were seated, some of whom found solace in witnessing the execution. Slowly, Danny closed his eyes, and the doctor pronounced him dead at 6:13 p.m. as Danny's soul departed with the sunset of that day. Using the life story of the serial killer Danny Rolling, American writer Kevin Williamson was able to write the screenplay for the movie Scream, a horror and thriller film produced on December 20th, 1996. The movie achieved massive box office success and led to the production of several sequels. The Canadian actress Neve Campbell starred as Sydney, a girl who lost her mother to murder. After her father leaves her to continue her education at university, a murder occurs involving one of the university girls. Sydney then becomes the target of the killer, who stalks her with a frightening mask and a sharp knife. Sydney turns to her friend at the university but becomes suspicious of everyone, questioning the identity of the killer, and ultimately triumphs over him. When Kevin Williamson wrote the film's screenplay and plot, he drew inspiration from Rolling's method of attacking his victims with a knife inside their homes, a tactic rarely used by serial killers due to the risk of creating chaos and leaving evidence. However, Rolling was meticulous in knowing the number of residents in the targeted apartments and concealing evidence before escaping, which made it difficult for the police to identify him due to the lack of fingerprints and sufficient evidence. The killer's use of the eerie, terrifying mask in the film might have been inspired by Rolling's sorrowful and gloomy facial expressions. Additionally, the knife used in the movie matches the type of knife Rolling used in his crimes. The writer avoided including rape in the film's murders to prevent it from becoming merely a pornographic film. In the movie, Sydney portrayed the state of fear, confusion, and suspicion that prevailed among the townspeople, who suspected people unrelated to the crime. Like many serial killers, Rolling's aggressive personality and obsession with sex and controlling his victims through restraint were shaped by repeated humiliation from his father and a broken family. As for the motive of fame, it is not surprising in a society that glorifies killers and produces films about their life stories.